Why, hello, and welcome to No More Bits. I'm your host, Matt Walker. I am 1/3 of the group Walrus, who has a podcast called Little Bits and Pieces. And this, of course, is a companion to that podcast where I don't do bits. I'll actually tell you about the improv topic that we were supposed to talk about for the episodes. Today's episode is a companion to episode 4, Is This Real Life?, where we go in detail, well, not in detail, where we go, where we start off talking about references, real life, stuff like that. So this episode is all about that. I am a huge proponent of evergreen material. I think evergreen material is the thing that keeps people coming back, right? Nobody remembers that cold open on SNL where Donald Trump and Joe Biden talked, right? It's noise, right? It can be funny seeing something referenced. You're like, oh, that thing that is on everyone's mind right now. But I feel as though the more difficult thing to do and the more artful thing to do is to find what's funny about that and bring it outward into something that 2 years from now, someone will go, remember that thing? That's so funny, right? Now in improv, there's a specific way that references get used, right? You've all probably seen shows where someone just mentions, oh, that's like this, right? Those are sort of joke outs. What does that mean? That means that it doesn't really add anything. It's just sort of pointing to the audience and going like, yeah, you know that thing? This is like that thing. It's unnecessary in the same way that I don't need to see the president interacting with other people at the top of a sketch show that I would prefer to not have that, you know? That said, there can be a right way to do references. I think when you don't force a reference, it's great. For example, we were doing a show where I happened to be reaching out to Christian and Jeff, or Christian and Kyle, actually. I was reaching out to them like, no, I'll always love you. Like, my hands are outstretched. And Christian saw that as a force choke, right, in Star Wars. So if you've seen Star Wars, you know that Darth Vader can force choke people. He does so with Grand Moff Tarkin in the first old film, whatever, episode 4. Look, see, your eyes are already glazing over, right? Even if you know that reference, you're kind of like, yeah, so what, right? But because he noticed the way my hands were reaching out, he was kind of like, oh, this is like the force choke. He didn't turn to the audience and go, force choke, everyone. Which I would arguably laugh out even harder, but he just started doing it. And then I leaned into it and I started being the emperor as he changed into the emperor rather than the Chancellor Palpatine. But see, like eyes glazing over, it doesn't matter. In the Revenge of the Sith, where he's going, no, 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 and it's very stupid, very funny. But here's the thing about that. That exists on the level that someone not having any idea what Star Wars is gets it, right? They understand it. That I have suddenly pivoted to hurting them and I am becoming this grand nefarious being who is shooting lightning at them. They might not see that because my object work isn't incredible with lightning. But that's the idea, you're not forcing it. It happens naturally, right? If you are accidentally playing out the plot of Sleepless in Seattle or You've Got Mail, you have to be able to recognize that, right? How do you do that if you've never seen the thing, right? Well, you go with it. You just keep going with it. And you hope that your scene partners can clue you in enough to where you can play that reference, right? The idea is you're not in the dark ever. If you don't know the reference, you lean into it regardless, right? So Kyle, for example, at no point in that scene is doing anything other than what Christian is doing. So I don't know if he recognized, I'm sure he did. Kyle Shoemaker, great improviser. Shout out Kyle Shoemaker. Christian Torres, shout out Christian Torres, great improviser. But all he was doing was also being choked, right? He wasn't like, oh, how do I change this so I add information to this Star Wars storyline now, right? He just went with it. One of the biggest, and we talk about this in the episode, but one of the biggest problems in improv is basically denying a reference. So this would happen in practice all the time. We would be like, all right, we cut to Tatooine, right, or something. Star Wars related, or we mention, let's do a Star Wars scene. Someone inevitably, in larger groups, they'll be like, I just know nothing about Star Wars. I got nothing. And it's like, well, guess what? You not knowing about Star Wars is fine. You can do whatever, but put it in the Star Wars universe, right? This is the other thing. We'll talk about genre shows later on when we cover it on the Little Bits and Pieces, but you have to be able to just do improv. If you just do improv, you're in the Star Wars universe if everyone around you is putting you there. You know what I mean? So all you have to do is yes and. If someone goes, hey, Chewbacca, like, you're not going to go, what the heck's a Chewbacca? You're going to go, oh, what's up? You know? And they're like, oh, Chewbacca, your voice has changed. Yeah, what can I say? I got the surgery. It's like, oh, snap, that's great for you, man. Right? So references, I tend to avoid them, topical references specifically. But if you have references that you're like, oh, this comes up regularly, that are in the cultural zeitgeist, you have to be at least well-versed enough in that thing to do it, to honor that reference. So be a student of life. I got that advice from Gavin Hawk when I was starting out. It's great advice. Become a student of life. Know everything there is about everything. I know that that's a futile pursuit, but do it anyway. Well, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of No More Bits. We'll see you next time. The show you've just listened to is a part of the Podfix Network. To listen to other shows on the network, head over to podfixnetwork.com, follow on Twitter @Podfix, and join the Podfix Nation at facebook.com/Podfix.